Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whatever you find a way to watch, listen to this podcast. Is me, Marshawn Borja, the Burger Popper, coming at you. The time of recording this is Memorial Day, so I want to wish everyone, just to remember why we have Memorial Day. Remember the people that gave their sacrifice to the causes of this country, and of course, college football is no stranger to Memorial Day. People that come to mind for me are Don Hollander, the great Army quarterback who's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, who died in Vietnam, or of course the 1939 Heisman Trophy winner, Niall Kinnick, who died during flight training during World War II. So just while you enjoy your moments of rest and time with family, just remember those who have lost those in service to this country. After that solemn note, I want to introduce our guest, a familiar friend of the podcast, Matthew Waters. And we're talking about because last week they released the Fox Friday night schedule, and I'd say I'm excited for it. I mean, there's definitely some mixed emotions that we're going to talk about. No, I don't hate high school football. I played high school football, as a teenager, but I also have a realistic kind of outlook at high school football. I guess at college football's relationship with high school football on the Friday nights, but a beneficiary, or you could say a victim of this Friday night schedule, is the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So we're here to talk about that with Matthew, my resident Rutgers expert. Matthew, is everything going?
Good. I just want to take a moment, say thank you and acknowledgement to you and your family for your service, and an acknowledgement of solemnity to my great uncle Harold, who was a combat aerial photographer in World War II and was killed coming back from a bombing mission over enemy territory when his plane was hit and they crashed in England, where he's still buried. But we'll take that from here, and we'll turn our eyes to the things that make America great, which is our love of sport, and it brings us together for the most part from many disparate places and backgrounds, and use that as a maybe unifier as we go ahead. And one of those would be Friday nights under the lights. Always a tradition in high school, but over I think the past few years, certainly I find it's about 7 years or so now, they've really pushed and leaned into the college football on Friday nights. Something, the Big East I think made Thursday nights, and really brought the attention of midweek college football. And I think the NFL saw that opportunity, and they have pretty much taken Thursday away from the college ranks and relegated any Thursday games to being of a lesser status. I'm a Maction lover, but I can't speak for everybody, but unfortunately, that's what it's kind of done. It's made bigger conferences say, well, we're going to go into Friday nights to increase our viewership. Rutgers has two Friday night games this year, one away, one at home, which is at least good that they're not both at home, so that you don't have to take 2 days off from work to tailgate. But I would say from the home game, we're excited um, to have that. I think, people don't mind it so much. 8 o'clock, you can take a half a day of work, get down to the stadium, still tailgate for a good amount of time. It's a September game, so it's still warm out and enjoyable. It's the night games in November. We even had once in December, a night game against USF. That when it gets a little bit brutal in the Northeast and in December at night, can get a bit chilly. But the fall, I think we're all excited. It's really the USC game at 11 o'clock at night Eastern time that I think is the big concern for us, is really staying awake. I think we're all fans. We all want to watch, but it is a struggle. I mean, the East Coast numbers are going to be almost non-existent, most likely, for that game, because even a lot of the Rutgers fans, I'll admit it, we do have a very loyal fan base, but we do have some really older fan base on the East Coast that follow Rutgers, and they're not staying up. I know my father's 84. There's no way he's watching that game live. I'm going to wake up in the morning and watch that game. It's just not going to happen. And he's someone who watches every game when it's on TV. So those numbers I think have to be discounted. And I think the Big Ten knows that, and I think the networks know that. I think this game is all about exposing and marketing USC as a Big Ten team, that this is a Big Ten game. It's a conference game. USC is a Big Ten team. And that's the point of why they're doing this. And so I can appreciate it. I don't really enjoy it, I want to say, but I can appreciate it. I do. I mean, I do think there's other challenges on the East Coast that no one has thought about. One of them being the bars and the restaurants. Because how are you going to have a watch party when most of your bars are closing down at 2 o'clock, and now this game is still in the middle of the fourth quarter? Like, are you going to kick everyone out? What's the game plan going to be? So I have a feeling the local bars, probably in New Brunswick and central New Jersey, will probably get permissions to extend till the end of the game and then have to close up. But then those people still have to pay all their employees now extra time to work and do stuff. So, how much more are you selling at the end of the night, from a financial perspective? So I think it kind of really, an 11 o'clock game for an East Coast team kind of kills the vibe a bit of the game for the East Coast. It's really going to be, you're going to watch in homes and maybe have a few friends over, and which friends want to drive home at 2:30 in the morning when the game finally ends. I mean, I remember we played, I want to say it was Fresno State and Washington State we opened up seasons with in like 2012, 2013, and those games were late, but I don't think they started at 11. I think they might have started closer to 9 or 10, but I do remember them being extremely late watches. Um, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't, people really weren't up in arms about it, but I think this is the latest 11 o'clock that we've ever actually started to kick off. And I think that's going to be a challenge to get people's attention. And then, you have the World Series, I think, believe is running earlier in the night. So this is a game that's definitely getting pushed a bit to the backside of the inventory for sports reporting that evening. I mean, it's not going to be on any late night, New York, East Coast sports updates. It'll have to be something people catch in the morning. So I think it's going to be, it won't be in, probably won't even make the online much until later in the day. uh, they'll probably just mostly have like the AP recaps that they purchase and just stick them on their online site. So I think it's a game that gets a little bit lost, and I think that's just the way sports is going to be, though, with a conference that spans from the Atlantic to the Pacific. That you're going to have games that are going to run late. I think on the other side, you have USC and UCLA, where they have games at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. Like, we play Washington, it's 5 p.m. in Seattle. So they all have to get out of work, they all have to go have dinner, etc. So I think, they have their own challenges when their teams are playing prime time on the East Coast. And I think it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of season USC is having, to see what kind of interest is there for them, and see how much this pays off. Whether it would have been better just to leave it in the traditional Saturday time slots. Although, would Saturday at 8 p.m. be any better on if it were on the West Coast? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it really markedly changes it between either day. I think it's really about the time, but I think we live in a time where if you're going to have a conference of 16 teams spread across the entire country, you're going to have some new world order to it, and just people have to accept, hey, this is what happens now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree because the thing that sticks out to me is, for example, Thanksgiving weekend. That's all 18 teams are gonna play Thanksgiving weekend. Bottom line up front. That's not everyone will stay at home. They play at home, but that's 18. That's nine TV windows if everyone plays at home. If every which I guess you can discount USC, and I guess in weeks when USC hosts Notre Dame on Thanksgiving Day weekend, that is nine TV windows. I should actually, um, and you're gonna have to spread those out. So I totally agree. But for me, I think I look at the exposure for Rutgers. Like, this is a game that, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is a game that would have been on the Big Ten Network. I think in all likelihood that this would have been USC's Big Ten Network game. And now, however small it may be, Rutgers will be at the epicenter of the college football universe, because, and you mentioned high school football. That's why I say however small it will be. But this is a network TV game. People watch these games because they're on. I look at last year, Nebraska, Minnesota, the opening Thursday night game. 1.9% of households that were watching that game, 3.49 million viewers were watching that game. So I want to know your thoughts on that, just being the center of the college
I
football
think
universe.
I think that's an excellent point. And what I would say to that is, listen, the majority of the eyeballs are going to come from people interested about watching USC play on prime time, just because of the timing. But then from a Rutgers standpoint, it's, hey guys, you got all these eyeballs watching you. Everybody's tuned in. This is when you can make your mark, right? This is when you can showcase yourself to the rest of the college football world, that you're a good team, that you're a true Big Ten team, you're a competitive team, and you're continuing to build and develop yourself into, hopefully pushing for higher placement within the conference. We started 4 years ago in a very low spot when Greg took over. He's been building every year. I think we ended the year on a good note with a good win in the Pinstripe Bowl, and now people would like us to keep moving up. And this is one of those opportunities, which is like, you know what? You guys in New Jersey know Rutgers, so we don't have to put you on prime time. You can be on the BTN and people will see it. Being on national network and prime time in these other markets, that's a great opportunity for the kids. What I worry about is, you're flying out what, Thursday morning probably. It's a long flight. You got to get your body adjusted because if you're an East Coast person playing that game, it's going to be tough at 1 o'clock in the morning on your body clock to push yourself. That it's a lot easier to be Washington playing at 5 o'clock on your body clock than to be playing at 1 o'clock in the morning on your body clock in a very physical type of sport. And I think that's going to be a real challenge that we're going to have to overcome. It's just you get tired. I mean, you can try to adjust your sleep or whatever, but the reality is there's just not enough time for your body to truly adjust to being that physical. You have to hope it's more adrenaline can kick in and just keep you going because I mean, that's just, that's going to be the really tough thing. But I don't know, how much, Greg's always a planner. So I am sure he's been on the phone with 1,000 different people to talk about what's the best way to approach flying out for a West Coast game and being ready to play and finding out what to do. And if he had to get out there on Wednesday and not Thursday to do it, I'm sure he would find a way. But I think that's a challenge in this game for us is are we physically and mentally going to be able to move our body clocks to be able to compete at an 8 o'clock start out on the West Coast? And it's not the Rose Bowl, right? Rose Bowl, you got so much adrenaline running through you. It doesn't matter who you are. And you've been out there for a week already doing all your little activities. This is a like you're I mean, we hate to say it, but it's like pro sports. It's like the NFL, right? This is your job. You're gonna fly out, you gotta do what you gotta do and be ready to play. And so that's gonna, I think, a new thing, but you're doing it now with kids that are 18, 19 years old, not seasoned professionals that are a little bit more in tune on how to get the job done. I think that's going to be a challenge, but I think you're 100% right. It's a great opportunity for the program to be put on a national network at a prime time slot in a larger portion of the country, just not our home prime area. And I think that's critical. And I think that's the point of these conferences expanding is to create create matchups that can get them on national TV. I don't think, as much as they like the BTN network, they want Big Ten conference games on national pieces, and they want to be able to put their marquee teams out there doing it. And in the process, that means they're going to have some matchups like this. Maryland, I'm sure, is going to end up playing at 11 o'clock at night. One of these days, if they're not already on the schedule this year for it, it'll come around to them. Penn State as well. It's East Coast time. You're just going to have to deal with it, guys. But I think overall, it'll be good for the conference to develop what they want to be. But I think it's going to be a challenge. I think there'll probably be a learning curve, and we'll see what comes back.
I think it's interesting you bring up Penn State because something a lot of people noticed was the heavyweights of the conference, the big wigs, the Penn States, the Michigans, Ohio States. They were absent from the Fox Friday night release, which is interesting. Which I honestly don't even know if they'll even make it on the schedule. I mean, I think they hold that much weight, to be honest with you. Another thing too that I look at is the travel because the LA Memorial Coliseum is a historic stadium, right? I'm sure we were talking before. A lot of Rutgers fans wanted to make the trip out, right? So, I mean, and of course, you guys being in conference, like, there'll be times to do it again, but when is the question? Like, when would the next time you guys visit? So that's something I wonder for fan travel to venues like the Rose Bowl, like LA Memorial Coliseum.
Yeah, I mean, I think Oregon and Washington don't have as much cachet to most of the fans I know, but certainly the Coliseum and the Rose Bowl are just in they're just historic landmarks in the world of sports. And to go watch your own team get to play in them. I mean, we all joke, but there's always a grain of truth in humor, right? Which is, I'm going to USC or UCLA Rutgers at the Rose Bowl because I may never see Rutgers in the Rose Bowl other than that type of game. And that's okay. But I want to be there. I want to see my own team in that stadium. I don't care that it's a regular season type of game. Like it's just a historic place. And so is the Coliseum. I mean, I grew up watching not just USC, but I grew up watching the Rams play in that whenever I was a kid watching TV, and so to me, and the '84 Olympics. Like, I'm old enough to remember the Olympics. I was going into eighth grade. Like, that's just a historic place. Unfortunately, I can't get there, but I have friends that are going because it's just the magic of where they play to people who have grown up their whole lives seeing it, but never being close enough to go or have a reason to. And then we actually have a very large alumni population in Southern California from Rutgers. So I think there might actually be some decent representation than people might expect for Rutgers to be out there for that game. But I think the heavyweights, I think you're going to see them on Friday nights, but not in year one. I think year one is the West Coast experiment, and I think if they can find some success, then they'll start to push back and say you're going to have to take one for the team and do what we need you to do. But I think their weight was, hey, you're going to use Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana and Purdue and maybe even push on Michigan State a bit and say you're going to use those guys to go out there uh, to start and show us that it's worth something, and then we'll stick our toe in the water. That's fine. I mean, who are we to be upset? I mean, personally, I can't be any more happy to be in this conference as Rutgers, right? I mean, 2012, we thought we might die as a as a program based on everything that happened, and now we have a first class seat on the cruise ship of college football, and so we can't complain about that. I think the real challenge now is to see how these bigger conferences shape up. Is it going to stay this way? Is it going to evolve based on the new NIL that's come out and move to a league itself and just get rid of conferences altogether? Who knows? But I think you have to take the good with the bad. And I think anytime Rutgers can be on national TV, being covered from the national broadcast perspective on the guys on the sidelines and in the studio, I think it's a good thing. And I think we have to just embrace it and, drink some good coffee, keep ourselves going during the game. Maybe a little whiskey, depending on how well the offense is playing, added in.
Yeah, something that I know you mentioned the World Series as a lead-in, and of course, both of us, that's how we first, kind of came across each other on Twitter as USFL fans for the Generals, and I think about the value of lead-in programming. The big thing being in the spring with the USFL having the Kentucky Derby as a lead-in for a couple years, and though that actually helped ratings out a lot. I mean, this is a bit of a different situation, but in those USFL games after the Kentucky Derby, like those got, I think, over a million, I think possibly even 2 million viewers for inconsequential regular season game like featuring the Michigan Panthers. No offense to them, they're my new favorite UFL team, but with having a World Series lead in, like that definitely helps viewership a lot. I'm not sure how the averages in and mathematics work in terms of ratings, since I go off the average, but I would assume that the early viewership would be fairly high.
I think so. I mean, I think USC needs to be playing well for that game to get what they want out of it. I think if USC is struggling in the season, it hurts them. I don't. You're not putting us in as the draw. It's them. So I think though you might get some additional West Coast Mountain Time Zone people watching the World Series continue to stay up and watch some more sports that night and say, "Oh, USC's on. Let's watch this game." And I think because it is a Big Ten game, they're going to put their best foot forward to support and do it. Like I think if it were a non-conference game, it would get kind of the half we care about this. But this is the Big Ten's contract. They want first class. They don't do things halfway. So this game is going to get the full in-depth coverage that any other Big Ten game should get. And I think that helps us, and I think it helps the conference. But it'll be it'll be interesting to see because it is late October. So at that point, you're going to have a good understanding of where their season is going and what they're fighting for by that point. Are they pushing to get towards a playoff spot? Are they just middle of the road, or has this been a disappointment without Caleb Williams, running the show? And even last year, he was running the show, and it was a disappointment. So, and that was where a lot of the hype was. So it'll be interesting to see. And also, I mean, I'm going to say this personally. I think Washington, they seem to be a better physical team, but USC, bless you, UCLA, and Oregon. I mean, the Big Ten's a physical conference. I mean, not that no football's physical, but the Big Ten is a very physical conference week in and week out. It can really wear on you. And that's when your ability to be ready to handle that shows up. And I think that's something that we're also going to be seeing as we get into a game like this. Like, how many Big Ten malls have they been through by the time they show up at the end of October? And as their depth taking a hit in certain spots just because guys are nicked and banged up and they're playing, but they're hurt. And that's something we went through immensely in the first few years in the Big Ten, where like one guy goes down, we're screwed. Like, we just can't handle the we don't have the depth to compete. Like, we're good for 2 quarters, and and then we were just a smaller program. They're bigger, they should have more depth, but still, it's going to be a lot harder on them physically. They're not going to be used to having to take that pounding week after week. It's just a different type of style of football that they're going to have to adjust to. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest things we're also going to see is, are they a team that's coming in strong? Are they limping in towards the end of the season? I think that'll play into it as well. But I think that's what this is about. We're going to find a lot out about some of these new expanded conferences, right? How's Arizona going to handle traveling all over the place, something it's not used to? When did you ever see Arizona playing east of Texas in a game? I can't recall either one of them ever coming out to the Midwest or the East Coast to play a regular season game of any kind. Never. I just can't even think of it. So I think now that they're forced, right? Somebody's got to go to Orlando and play UCF. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges in this first season of super mega conferences geographically, is really seeing how all these teams start to perform come the end of October. And I think from our side, to the earlier point is, yeah, I mean, we've got to go out there at 11 o'clock. Our body clocks have to keep up with the time change and be ready to play at 1 o'clock in the morning. But this is at the end of October, right? We've already now slugged our way through 6 probably conference games, getting ourselves beat up in the Big Ten. How is that going to affect? You're not just showing up healthy and rested. You're showing up towards the back end of your season, banged up, pushed around, and now you got to be ready to go for it. You're coming out at halftime at 1 o'clock in the morning. You still got 2 full quarters to play. How are you going to respond to that? So I think that's something it's a new world that we got to learn our way through. And I think we'll be one of the guinea pigs to do that. And that's but we invented the sport, so we should be happy to be at the forefront of ever changing it and bringing it forward. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about Rutgers being the birthplace and everything. But yeah, no, I think the physicality is something to overlook a lot, especially just the way that the game is today. But for every, Pac-12 team or Oregon or Washington likes to air it out, you have your Iowas, you have your Michigans, which USC does play. USC does play Michigan, I think, at the Big House, I want to say, earlier this year. So I mean that one's gonna take a toll on them for sure. And then I mean you have Minnesota too. It's like not even just the usual suspects. Like Minnesota had their running back carry the ball for 30 times and run for 200 yards in their bowl game. So it's like you say, like the physicality is very present. So
I mean, I would say this. You can joke all you want about Iowa's ineptitude that they've had on offense the past couple of years, but you might win 14-10, but you will take a physical beating in that 14-10 win. Like, they are big, strong, and physical, and both sides of the ball. And maybe they didn't put the points up, but your defense paid a price to only give up 10 points. Like, the linemen, the running backs, they're strong. They're going to hit you, and they're gonna put a pounding on you. And the thing is, where people would say, well, USC, they would play these people. It's like, right, but they didn't play Michigan and then play Iowa and then play Minnesota and then turn around and play Nebraska. And that's the difference, is you now have to do it 5 or 6 times, in a row, compete with those teams, where maybe it was, hey, we're running our fun and gun, wide open West Coast football. Oh, okay, now we're going to play Notre Dame. That's a little bit more of a, Midwestern physicality type of game. But then we're going to go back to playing our wide open game again, where now it's like, no, you can spread us out. I mean, Ohio State spreads people out. There's not like we don't play. It's not like everybody's just playing 3 clouds of dust, but it's going to be physical. Like, the line play are big, they're physical. The linebackers are big and physical. You're just going to have to do it week in and week out and take that physicality. And how is that going to affect your team? And I think, listen, UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon, my opinion is I don't feel for them. They're well-known teams. They are high in recruiting rankings all the time. They get a lot of hype. So for them, this is about proving that their brand of football can translate to any conference, and that they're going to come in and be competitive. And obviously, Washington, they were in the playoffs last year, so I think they're well positioned. I think Oregon, they're a well coached team. I think they have a lot of talent. So I think they'll all adjust. It'll just be a learning curve for them, and they'll have to approach it, this year as a bit of how do we respond to a different type of football week in and week out. But I think all four programs, they have talent. They're not coming in like we came into the Big Ten from the Big East and at a much lower level. So I think they should be able to handle it to a degree, but I think it's going to really see about how they handle it. And certainly like Lincoln Riley, he's a guy and who's really always coached that I don't play defense. I just try to outscore you all the time. The way he did at Oklahoma. I mean, that's just it'd be interesting to see how that works within the Big Ten. Will it be successful or will it fall on its face? And that's part of the interesting aspects to the new alignment. So we'll find out at the end of October how well we're doing. That's for sure. I mean, I'm interested to see Greg Schiano defense against Lincoln Riley's offense because Greg is always when it comes to those offenses, he always has some wrinkles. He's always blitzing from every different angle and running his secondary in every different way. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Up against a top level mind. He had his struggles with Brian Kelly, that's for sure, when he was at Cincinnati. So we'll see how much we've learned in the past decade about playing those offenses.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's just interesting the molding or the melding of play styles with one another. And I mean, of course, there's history too. Like I had forgotten about those late 2000s, Brian Kelly duels with those great offenses at Cincinnati, which it seems an eternity ago that Brian Kelly was at Cincinnati. It seems so long ago, but that's yeah. That I mean, and it could be the other way around, like you say. Like these Big Ten offenses struggle to keep up with USC and UCLA, but I'm inclined to think the other way around because I'm a very much defense wins championships guy. But I mean, it could definitely be the other way around. And I mean, we're saying like USC, Oregon also too is another I guess suspect we'll have to see. I feel like out of all those Pac-12 teams, like you say, Washington, when I think about their 2016 playoff run, I think about the defense, just how many great like players they had on that defense.
Yes.
Jake Browning was great, but
They
he
killed
wasn't the
us. We
one.
played that
Yeah.
year. That
Yep.
was that was Chris Ash's. I think it was his very first game. We had to go out and open the season with them, and then we just got demolished. I mean, they were at a level that we couldn't even comprehend at that point. I mean, it was just unreal. And the wide receiver Ross was the last name, I think. Maybe was
Yeah,
that?
John Ross. Yeah.
Yeah, he just. I mean, it was like he was running in another gear compared to us.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the thing is, but we were a struggling team. It's different when you're going to play the teams that have been successful in the Big Ten now. And I mean, the Big Ten coaching. I would say this: it's a very strong league for coaches of people that have been successful. And I think that's also going to be something that we're going to see is that, hey, all these good coaches, everybody can't be winners. Teams are going to have losing records. It's just the way it works. So how is that going to be? I mean, Matt Rule's a great coach. You have at Illinois, Bielema is a good coach. You have everywhere. I mean, it's funny. The biggest coach on the hot seat's Ryan Day, and he's got a winning percentage we would kill for. We would sacrifice
Hmm.
children for, right? He's the one who's on the hot seat in this conference. But it's that competitive and that difficult to win, and especially win at the top consistently. And I think that's something that I think Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA are going to find out. Really just how little room now they have for mistakes and still be able to compete to be in the playoffs because you can expand it to 12. You're not taking 8 teams from one conference. I think maybe the max you might see out of one conference might be 3 at best, because I think you might get 3
Yeah.
SEC, 3 Big Ten, 3 Big 12, and then you're going to have a few sprinkled in from potentially Group 5, et cetera, to get to 12. So, I mean, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Minnesota, you just got to go through all of them to get up even just to be in the top 3. Penn State. So I mean, it's going to be hard. And they play each other hard, the 4 teams coming from the Pac-12. So they play each other hard. So it's going to be a very different world. Usually those, 3 teams are fighting for the one spot. Now, there's no more I want to say breaks in the schedule per se. It's going to be hard and physical, even if the teams aren't good. I mean, they're just going to pound on you. I mean, that's one thing I noticed in the Big Ten over the years is doesn't matter how bad any of the teams are, they're physical with each other and they just wear on each other. And I think that's going to be a challenge, but I think it'll be fun. It'll be something to watch, and also I'm interested to see how the ACC is, similar with schools now flanked all over the place is going to handle this and have the same kind of challenges of wanting to get their own exposure on ESPN of getting games into prime time. And it's like, well, I guess North Carolina is going to play at 11 o'clock at night at Stanford because we want to put this game on prime time in the West Coast. So there's somebody staying up late, you know, I don't know if it's in Syracuse or wherever else, but it's going to come back around the same way it is for us. So I think it's the new world order, and it's just but for college football junkies like ourselves, we just like I said, some good coffee, maybe a few no dos as a callback to my days in college, Jolt Colas, and you could just basically go from Friday almost all the way into Sunday morning without ever sleeping and still watching a game. I mean, you can get a Friday night game till 2:30, catch a couple of hours sleep, get up and start getting ready to tailgate again for the next batch of games to kick off by 12 noon,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
which is not a
And I
bad
think
thing.
it's yeah, exactly. Like, and I think it's interesting you mentioned the ACC too, because the thing that strikes me is the CW looks like they're wanting to become a player in college football, and it's like they're already experimenting with a Friday night game this year. But with Cal and Stanford, like, I mean, there's gonna have to be, like you said, maybe the Boston College or like the Syracuse's that have to travel out on a Friday night to Memorial or the other way around where they have to host Cal or Stanford. Excuse me. They have to host Cal or Stanford on a Friday night. So it's just interesting, like you said, the New World Order, which um I think the hardest thing though, like we talked before, is just being interested in these matchups, like these manufactured matchups for TV with like no history behind it, no rhyme or reason. And the big one for me is like the Big 12 was like because I talked to you, I mean, we talked before about how like the Big 10 has the Midwestern core that's been like over hundreds of years, but it's like for the Big 12, like you only have like a few Big 8 schools sprinkled in. You got, Oklahoma State. I think off the top of my head, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State,
Kansas,
Kansas,
Cam,
and that's it. Like,
Colorado, back,
yeah, shoot, my bad. I've gotten so used to Colorado being
Oklahoma
the
State.
Pac-12.
So there you go. That
Yeah,
almost gets you to 8 schools, almost.
yeah, 4 or 5 schools, but it's like even then, those 4 or 5 schools having to travel to UCF, having to travel to Cincinnati, West Virginia, and you can do the same thing with the Southwest Conference schools that are in that league. There's only I think three: Tech, TCU, Houston, Texas Tech, Baylor. Four. There's four. So it's like, what is the identity of this league other than being a league that stacks up TV inventory? And that's why it's so hard for me to follow.
Yeah, I think we're in a huge shift for college football right now because I think, like you said, they've now built conferences based on TV inventory, but that can't sustain you. I mean, nobody wants to watch bad programming. That's why shows get canceled, right? So it's going to become down to will the interest hold? Will people really want to take an interest and follow? And what is that going to look like? And then will it start to evolve into something else? I don't know, but I think I think this is going to be a landmark season for college football between what NIL has done and what conference realignment has done. I want to say this is probably one of the most exciting seasons I've seen coming from college football as a whole. Just of this is totally new, totally different. What's happening? Almost the anticipation I want to say I felt when the BCS first appeared way back in the 90s, because I had lived my whole life of waiting for sports writers to tell me who the number one team is so I can say that's BS percent, So we were finally going to have something that put two teams on the field to try to compete. And that was like, this is great. This is great. So I think I kind of feel the same way, which is what is this going to look like? Where is this sport going to go that I've always known? Like I'm interested to see. I'm a little bit fearful that it could go terribly wrong, but I have hope. That maybe it'll get stronger and develop better, but it'll be a definitely not going to be easy. It's definitely going to be a growth process, and it's going to have some bumps along the way and some lessons to be learned. But I definitely think it's going to be a season like no other. And is it starting in Ireland again? Are we starting off across the pond with the first one.
Yeah, we are. Georgia Tech, Florida State, which I mean
Which
doesn't really move the needle.
you don't get much more interest in Ireland than Georgia Tech, Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to, I guess, accept it. And like myself as well. I have to accept that it doesn't get much better than Notre Dame, Navy, in Ireland for in terms of those matchups, which I'm sure you can remember, like the Mirage Bowl slash Coca-Cola Classic in Tokyo, like how that was a yearly event and the matches weren't really made for Japan matchups, but except for 1984, that matchup was made for Japan, Army Montana. Just gotta.
Well, in '89, we closed the season in Dublin against Pittsburgh and then fired our coach. I think we might be the only school that fired our coach on another continent.
I think so. Unless someone got fired after the International Bowl, or Bahamas Bowl. But yeah, I think so. Like I actually know another continent. Yeah, Canada is part of this part of North America. So
Yes.
never mind. Not don't I do not have a geography degree. Um, but yeah, Maddie. I don't have anything else really.
Okay, yeah, but I'm looking forward and good luck to your Black Knights. And they start the AAC this season, do they not?
They do.
They
So, I
do. So
mean, yeah. So for me, the thing is, it's like I feel like it may sound hypocritical to sub, I guess, just what we're talking about with like the whole conferences. But in my opinion, I think the AAC is essentially Conference USA, what it was. But Conference USA started as that, like their identity was that, alliance of independence. So for me, it's like yes, the American is hard to follow. I will say that it's hard to follow sometimes, like having like stretching from, New York all the way to San Antonio, all the way down south to Boca Raton. But there's like little pockets, that bring of those longtime independents that have finally found a home, like Memphis, Tulane, East Carolina, Army. Part of that original core UAB, part of that original core of independents that form Conference USA that kind of give the American that identity of it's like as much as I hate to say it, a misfit kind of um trying to become one of the big dogs in college football type of conference. But we started this year. I will say that I guess the thing is an Army fan now, because I've always wanted at some point, just to be an Army fan that travels like to a few games a year, But it's like I feel like them not being independent kind of makes it easier on me to be like, maybe a one or two, trips a year, just like balance it out. And just like some of the trips are trips like I'm not sure I really want to make ever, I guess. Like no offense to Tulsa fans. Sorry, no offense to East Carolina fans. I mean, unless Army's like highly ranked or it's like the AAC title game, not sure I want to make those trips. But it's like it's easier to balance like wanting to make trips to RB games and having an independent schedule, just being like, wow, like this is a really cool slate. Like last year, like I mean, there's no way, a guy like me out in Texas is making all three, if not even just one Power Five game. But I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to be part of the American. We do get a weeknight game too, but it's not a cross country game. We get it against Temple at the Link. So seeing I know Army's not used to playing at Lincoln Financial Field when it's empty. So it's gonna be a weird sight for that.
yes, well, I was at Rutgers the same time as now Commissioner Tim Pernetti was. So and I, friendly with Tim in later
Okay.
years. So maybe I'll put in a call to Tim and see if I can arrange for a game for you, if more of your interest, to be slated for your travel purposes. Just send me some notes and I'll pass it along to Tim.
Hopefully Army Navy, because that is another thing. Yeah, Army Navy tickets are almost becoming as hard to get as Super Bowl tickets, if we're being honest. It's really insane.
So, well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your summer before the real season starts.
Yeah, exactly. Less than 3 months, and I know this week we're getting the rest of the first couple weeks of I guess schedule releases on TV, and then June 6th is the bowl schedule. So super excited for that. We're getting close.
And I look forward to maybe be able to catch up with you, Notre Dame Navy at Yankee Stadium, or
Yeah,
Notre Dame Army. I
yeah,
said
Notre Dame
Navy.
Army. Yeah,
So
I mean,
I might be able to find my way to have a drink with you before or after. We'll see.
yeah. For sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm also going to Notre Dame Navy. I mean, like this year at MetLife. So either one, we'll definitely talk. I mean, you
Absolutely.
drive a hard bargain for the Rutgers Illinois pregame. Doubleheader. I'll just have to see if my dad is up to it because I don't.
Yes.
I think the concept of trying to see as many games in one day, I think that concept
Could be
might be
tough.
lost on him. Yeah, it's a tough sell on him, being an older
Well,
gentleman.
invitation's
Um,
always open.
yeah, absolutely. But thank you, Maddie.
No
Thank you for
problem.
joining. Until next time, everyone, just enjoy the rest of this day. Enjoy your rest. Actually, by the time I release this, I mean, be a work day anyway. But let's everyone enjoy your day. And until next time, everyone, peace on the soul, the bird popper.